truth is, Vice President Biden is naming names and the president himself responding more often and more forcefully because they see what we see. Polling data suggesting that voters in much of the country just aren't feeling much better about the economy. Higher gas prices only add to that anxiety, and economic anxiety is an incumbent politician's dreaded enemy. Where they're attacking is also telling. The vice president was in Ohio just 2 days after the president was in Ohio for some March Madness. The next stop for the Biden naming names tour, Florida. You see a lot of national polls, but in election years, the presidential contests are settled state by state. And while most of our attention is on the roller coaster Republican race, Team Obama knows the map this year is much, much, much tougher than 2008. So today, 236 days, I know you're counting, until the big election, the incumbents decided it was time to turn it up a notch and get personal.
Mitt Romney, Rick Santorum, and Newt Gingrich, these guys have a fundamentally different economic philosophy than we do.
Let's talk truth tonight with former Congressman and Newt Gingrich supporter J.C. Watts of Oklahoma, CNN contributor and Democratic strategist Maria Cardona, and the Time Deputy Washington Bureau Chief Michael Crowley. Let's start first, Maria, to you as a Democrat. You know, naming names, going to the key states, counting the days now to the election. Seems pretty obvious. They understand. They thought they'd have a nominee by now. They can't wait because the map's pretty tough.
Absolutely. There's no question about that, John. And regardless of whether they thought there was going to be a nominee now or not, I think it's smart politics because as a Democrat, Democrats love hearing this president all fired up and the administration all fired up, making sure that not just Democrats but independents understand what the challenges were coming in, what he has done to actually fix the economy. Now the numbers are going in the right direction, and also because he knows his biggest opponents or his most challenging opponents are not anyone on the Republican side. It's those gas prices you talked about, and it's the economy you talked about. And the more that they can frame this election right now about the contrast and the differences in the vision, the better it is going to be come November.
But how hard is it, Michael? I'm always reminded this year about 1992, where a lot of the statistics were getting better, as they are now. They were in 1992. But President George H.W. Bush could not convince much of the country because they didn't feel it. They still felt tired in their legs. They were still having trouble getting a job or getting health insurance. How delicate is the balance? You have to attack the Republicans, but how optimistic can Team Obama be about the economy, where in many of these key swing states, people are still hurting?
No, absolutely. That's precisely the dilemma. And there's been polling by a Democratic polling firm that shows that Americans don't want to hear the message, America is back. They don't think we're back yet. Obama has used that language. I think there's some danger that it will backfire, that people think that he's overstating it, overshooting the good news. So what you want to do is say, we're headed in the right direction, there's good news, things are getting better, without making it seem like you're taking too much credit or without making it seem like you're out of touch. I will say, incidentally, that it was interesting. I think Biden was speaking to the UAW there in Ohio. That bailout issue that he talked about today for Detroit is key. We think about Detroit, Michigan, but Ohio very dependent on the auto industry there. So you're going to see them hammering that theme because Romney and Santorum oppose that bailout.
But when you watch the Democrats, I know you're a Republican, you're a Gingrich guy, but you want one of these Republicans to beat him in the end. Smart to come out now? How do you calibrate a message at this point where you don't have an opponent? And the Republicans, one of the reasons the president's numbers are down a bit is because he's getting hammered by 3 candidates.
Well, and then I do think it's good politics on the part of the president to come out and defend himself. If I was a president, I would do the same thing. But the president, the American people are being reminded at least twice a week that gas prices are continuing to go up. They've doubled since the president took office. Today we saw the foreclosure numbers going up, people continuing to lose their homes. So they're saying, is this really getting better? Are we better off 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road than we were in 2009 when the president was sworn in? I don't think so. So the president still has some serious challenges, and I think, you know, there's an opening for the Republicans to gain some ground just based on some of the numbers that we see every week in the economy.
Does the president, forgive my language, think we're stupid when he uses, and all politicians do this. I'm not beating up on President Obama. They all do it. Yeah. But look at them going down to the gas pump. They say there's a magic wand, and I just asked this morning, can we go back and look? And lo and behold, there he is.
But you know what the difference is, John? I don't think you'll find footage of President Obama promising $2 a gallon. And that's exactly what
he didn't have a specific number, but at that event, he blamed President Bush, the oil companies, and even Hillary Clinton and John Edwards, saying they were part of the problem in Washington. And if you get these people out of the way and change Washington, prices would go down.
And so you're right. What goes around comes around. But I think the difference is that you had Michelle Bachmann back in the day and Newt Gingrich now promising $2, $2.50 a gallon. I think Americans are a little bit smarter than that, understanding that they know that the president doesn't get all the blame and he can't fix it all.
So write that down. It's not hypocrisy. If you don't use a number, it's not hypocrisy.
It's a big difference, John.
Well, but the answer isn't to say, well, it'll take us 10 years to get there. We've been using that lame excuse, Republicans and Democrats, for the last 30 years. When do we start the clock on the 10-year cycle to say, let's become less dependent on foreign oil? We've got enough
That's
resources.
exactly what this president is talking about.
But the
He
president said,
focuses
well,
on
it would
that.
take us 10
Absolutely
years to
become
get
less
there.
dependent on foreign oil.
We would be 4
No,
years
he
further
talks
down
about
the
that all the
road
time.
had he gotten on the team of expiration.
Anybody out there trust the politicians when they get into this debate?
I think not, John. I think one thing to remember as this election unfolds is that there's still just a pervasive hostility towards Washington and the political establishment in general. That energy that started the Tea Party and that energy that swept Obama in, that beat Hillary Clinton, people are sick of Washington. They don't like politicians. And I don't see any of the candidates right now really harnessing that sort of outsider energy. And I think that could really be the key to the election as we get ahead into the coming months.
John, one thing on oil. If it's worth fighting for in the Middle East, why isn't it worth exploring for here at home?
And we're doing a lot more exploring now than we did during the Bush
But not due to this president.
Yeah, yes, they have given out more.
I've got a buddy in Oklahoma that would say, "Give me a physical break."
But can I just say one thing? To Michael's point, he's right that the president, and he has actually been more careful in saying we are not where we need to be. We need to do a lot more because I think they understand that danger and that it's a balancing
All right,
act.
everybody stay put. You guys are going to stay with us. Going to work at a quick break. Talking politics tonight with the former Republican Congressman, Newt Gingrich supporter J.C. Watts of Oklahoma, our CNN contributor and Democratic strategist Maria Cardona, and the Time Washington Deputy Bureau Chief Michael Crowley. Let's move to the Republican race right now. In Puerto Rico primary, who would have thunk it, right? The Puerto Rico primary is now a big deal in the race. And Senator Santorum caused a bit of a stir when he said if you want statehood, and you vote yourself into statehood, he says you have to make English the official language. Let's listen to Senator Santorum first. We have Senator Santorum, then Governor. Let's listen to Senator Santorum defending this idea.
English has to be a language that is spoken here also and spoken universally.
We're going to do an avail at the next.
It is already the language of the federal government here in the island. I mean, that's the language. I think that will be a condition. I think it's important.
Now, Governor Romney, campaigning in Puerto Rico, he says this through a spokeswoman. Governor Romney believes that English is the language of opportunity and supports efforts to expand English proficiency in Puerto Rico and across America. However, he would not, as a prerequisite for statehood, require that the people of Puerto Rico cease using Spanish. Now, that's not, Senator Santorum did not say cease using Spanish, but he did say it should be the official language.
Yeah.
Good or bad politics?
I think terrible politics for Santorum, and frankly, I think terrible politics for Ron, too, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But there are 4.7 million Puerto Ricans on the mainland who actually vote in Florida, in Pennsylvania, and all of these key swing states. You don't mess with the Puerto Rican Spanish. I'm sorry. I grew up in Puerto Rico, and I know just how intense the status issue is and the language issue is and the culture issue is. I think it's tremendously bad politics. Romney is going to be interesting what he says tomorrow because he's going to get cornered by the Puerto Rican press because that statement said absolutely nothing. It didn't really state where he is on this, and it's going to be interesting if he really does back off of the official English as the language. He backs English only here on the mainland. So how is he going to jive those two? Plus, Romney's attacks to Rick Santorum on voting for Sonia Sotomayor, the icon of the island. Hugely bad politics on all of those fronts.
So Speaker Gingrich, you would think, might have an opportunity here, but he's not going. One of his daughters is going to campaign in Puerto Rico. Where's the comeback plan? Gingrich says, I'm into Tampa. Tell me on the map where we're going to have a day where we say, oh, there it is.
Well, John, I don't know, quite honestly, how any of the candidates get to 1,144 before the convention, and I think Newt can make a plausible argument to stay in the race if the resources are there. Simply because you see this little spat between Santorum.
Can you stay in picking up delegates, especially for now we still have the proportional states? Can you stay in picking up delegates at second and third, or do you at least have to win you know, we've got half the state still left to vote. Do you have to win 5, 6, 8 to be plausible?
I personally think there needs to be some wins and not just places and shows. And I think the Speaker probably feels the same thing. But with the proportionality of these delegates, I don't think Newt Gingrich is the issue. I think Mitt Romney is the issue. The fact that he's been running for 6 years, spent probably $150, $200 million, and he hadn't closed the deal. But that's been the narrative all along. Nobody wants to believe that. And I think Newt's still right in the middle of it, and so does he.
I think there's no question Romney's weak. Problem is, to beat him, somebody has to be stronger. And none of these other guys are stronger at the moment, right?
No, that's right. And, you know, with all respect to JC, I think the road is really hard for Newt. You know, he said he has to have the resources to stay in. You know, he does have a super PAC. He does have a benefactor in Las Vegas, but I don't know that he's going to have that much money coming in. And I think for, you know, you're seeing Santorum massively outspent in Illinois right now. I think that in this long slog, money will continue to be really defining factor. Romney has such a financial advantage. By the way, what's happening in Puerto Rico, I think, supports those Republicans who are upset that we have such a long, drawn-out primary process. They're sniping at each other. They're alienating a segment of the population. They're taking positions they don't really need to be on the record taking at this point, and that don't help either of the candidates in this fight in the general election. They don't need this. They would probably be better off settling
All
it.
self-inflicted, by the way.
Well, God help us if Newt Gingrich gets out, because with the Latino vote, the black vote, something I fought for 25 years, we have no chance.
The Republican Party wrote these.
I agree
Republican
with
Party
that.
wrote these new rules, and now they're living or
And the
heard
super
it
PACs,
by
too.
Michael, Maria, Jason, thanks for coming in.